Turn off your alarm right now. Turn on the pre-match.
The front is on fire. The Russians are advancing rapidly and have begun assaults in the Chernihiv region. Reaction to Trump's sharp statements, Russia has threatened the US with World War III. You need to hear this. Putin has put forward new demands to end the war. Moscow is once again under a massive drone attack. There is total chaos and panic at the airports. Germany will finance the production in Ukraine of powerful cruise missiles with a range of 2,500 kilometers. Hello, my name is Anastasia Dimitrovska, and I will tell you what is happening with Ukraine today. The situation at the front is escalating every day. According to Deep State, for the first time since December 2024, Russia has managed to capture more than 100 square kilometers of Ukrainian territory in just 1 week. Over the past week, the occupiers have made significant advances in the Sumy, Kharkiv, and Donetsk regions. In the last 24 hours, the pressure has intensified in Sumy, Kharkiv, and Donetsk regions, particularly near Bilovody, Kamyanka, and Kotlyarivka. There is also increased enemy activity observed on the border with the Chernihiv region, with the largest concentration of forces located near Sumy. Putin's troops continue to create a buffer zone, but in reality they are simply expanding the front, says Vadim Misnik, spokesperson for the Siversk Operational Tactical Group.
If we look at the border of the Chernihiv region and the north of Sumy, the enemy is mostly carrying out shelling and reconnaissance activities there, but there is no significant assault activity. On their side, they are also strengthening the border, building fortifications and mining the area. In other words, these are more defensive actions. But as for the Sumy region, where the enemy has the highest concentration of manpower and equipment in the Kursk region opposite Sumy, yes, they are trying to carry out assault operations.
The southern direction is also very difficult, and in fact the enemy's assault units there are staffed at 80 to 100% despite their losses. This was reported by the spokesperson for the Southern Defense Forces, Vladislav Voloshin.
Despite the enormous losses, the enemy is suffering in our direction. Literally, the enemy loses about 120 to 150 men per day in our sectors, and around 50 to 60 pieces of various equipment and weaponry. And despite suffering such losses, the enemy still continues to launch assaults. In addition, I want to mention that they are preparing a certain number of troops at training grounds located in the temporarily occupied territories of Kherson region, Zaporizhzhia region, and Crimea. And at these training grounds, the enemy is preparing even more assault troops.
In the east, in the area of the Serebryansky forestry, there is a huge concentration of artillery and drones. This was reported by Alexander Kosyuk, an officer of the 3rd Mechanized Battalion of the 115th Brigade. He says Ukrainian positions are holding, but the enemy pressure remains.
Right now, the intensity has dropped a bit, but we know why, because they're trying to outflank us. They couldn't break through head-on, and they won't succeed. That's why they've started to simply go around to squeeze us wherever they get the chance. They already have a large number of long-range artillery pieces involved there. They can target a single position with firepower all day long. Plus, drones on fiber optics are helping them with this.
So let's not forget, right now our troops at the front are under immense pressure from the enemy, which is why every HRIVNIA donated is important. Our front needs support from the rear right here and now. Support the Ukrainian military with donations. Leave a like to show your support for Ukrainian defenders. Right now, this is more important than ever. Write a few kind words in the comments. I know they are watching us. It seems that Donald Trump has finally seen the light, but that's not certain. Online, the US president suddenly made a sharp statement like this.
Vladimir Putin doesn't realize that if it weren't for me, a lot of very bad things would have already happened to Russia. And I mean very bad things. He is playing with fire.
And after the latest mass strikes on Ukraine and the killing of civilians, Trump even called Putin insane. Admitted, it sounds like an awakening, but it's too soon to celebrate. The State Department has already rushed to temper our hopes. They say that the latest statements by the American leader should not be seen as disappointment in Russia. The US still sees value in direct negotiations between Ukraine and Russia. Interestingly, Dmitry Medvedev responded to Trump's words about playing with fire. In fact, he responded with threats of a third world war.
Regarding Trump's words that Putin is playing with fire and that really bad things are happening to Russia, I know only one really bad thing: a third world war. I hope Trump understands that.
The White House unexpectedly responded to Medvedev's statement. Trump's special representative, Keith Kellogg, called his comment unsuccessful and thoughtless.
Stoking fears about a third world war is a regrettable and irresponsible comment from Medvedev and unworthy of a great power. President Trump is working to stop this war and put an end to the killings. We are waiting to receive the Russian memorandum that you promised a week ago. Ceasefire immediately.
Interestingly, Russian propaganda has recently changed its attitude toward Trump quite dramatically. If just a month ago they treated him neutrally, now they criticize and belittle him just as they once did with Biden. Putin has stated the conditions under which he is ready to end the war in Ukraine. He reminds me of a terrorist from Hollywood movies who demands $5 million and a helicopter, and only after that will he release the hostages. In fact, the new demands of the terrorist Putin were reported by Reuters, citing 3 Russian sources familiar with the negotiations.
According to the sources, Putin wants Western countries to formally commit to preventing Ukraine, Georgia, Moldova, and other former Soviet republics from joining NATO. Putin also demands that Ukraine remain neutral. The issue of Russia's frozen assets has been resolved. He also wants some of the sanctions to be lifted and for Russian-speaking citizens to be protected in Ukraine.
As we can see, these are once again unrealistic demands, since now Putin is insisting that neither Moldova, nor Georgia, nor any other former Soviet Union countries join NATO. I wouldn't be surprised if soon he demands, in order to end the war in Ukraine, that Latvia and Lithuania leave NATO just because they were once part of the USSR. In addition, one of Reuters' sources noted that if Putin realizes he cannot achieve a peace agreement on his own terms, he will try to show Ukrainians and Europeans that, quote, peace tomorrow will be even more painful. Such demands indicate one thing: Russia does not want peace, it wants Ukraine's capitulation. Let me remind you, the Kremlin recently promised to officially present its peace memorandum. The armed forces of Ukraine will not withdraw from Russia's Kursk region until Putin decides to end the war or cease fire. The corresponding statement was made by the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, during a conversation with journalists.
In the Kursk region, I believe our troops did the right thing. They withdrew from one direction and entered another direction in the Kursk region. Our forces have made good progress there. In other words, we will remain there until the Russians decide to end the war, or at least take the first step toward a ceasefire.
Let me remind you, Russia has long reported that they have driven the armed forces of Ukraine out of the Kursk region. In reality, this is not the case. Ukrainians continue to maintain a large foothold there. Besides the issue of the Kursk region, during this conversation with journalists, Zelensky suggested that the United States would be against Ukraine withdrawing from the territories it currently controls. This refers to the non-occupied parts of 4 Ukrainian regions.
It doesn't matter what's written in the ultimatums. If we're not just talking about some piece of paper, but about something that could lead to the first step toward a ceasefire. I think that even at the highest level, the United States of America today would not support Ukraine withdrawing from the territories where Ukraine is currently present.
Zelensky also stated that he would not want the United States to withdraw from the negotiation process. In fact, in this same context, he commented on Russia's desire to hold negotiations in Belarus.
Today, Belarus is a country from which missiles were launched at us, and accordingly, it is an ally of the country that attacked us, and troops entered from Belarus. Holding talks in Belarus is simply impossible.
Meanwhile, the 3 most realistic venues, according to Zelensky, are Turkey, the Vatican, and Switzerland. However, the numbers speak volumes about Russia's actual interest in negotiations.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
In particular, Zelensky reported that the Russians are preparing to produce up to 500 drones per day, while Russia is currently mobilizing 40,000 to 50,000 people each month. Ukraine, on the other hand, is currently mobilizing 25,000 to 27,000 people per month. We hope that by June 2026, the war in Ukraine will already be over. In fact, this statement was made by the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, during a meeting with journalists in Germany, hinting that by that time the Russian economy should fully feel the burden of the war and sanctions.
Of course, we understand the analysis of many intelligence agencies from many countries and the analytics. June 2026, we all hope that the war will already be over by then. But at the same time, we understand that the Russians will already be feeling the economic impact of the sanctions that have been imposed. And we believe that from that moment, somewhere from the summer of 2026, their economy will start to feel it strongly. We understand what kind of budget deficit there will be. Maybe it won't be catastrophic for their economy, because for the most part it operates in the shadows.
Currently, the main challenge for the Russian Federation, says Zelensky, is the growth of its own military-industrial complex.
We see that it cannot continue to grow next year. It will decrease, and it will keep decreasing steadily. In other words, the economy will change completely. They will spend everything on the war.
However, will this force Russia to end the war in Ukraine? The question obviously remains open. What do you think? Can sanctions, pressure, and a blow to the economy force Russia to stop the war against Ukraine? Write your thoughts in the comments. I always enjoy reading them. For now, Germany will not be supplying Ukraine with long-range Taurus missiles. This was reported by Bild, citing its own sources in the German government. For now, there is no reason to expect a breakthrough regarding the supply of Taurus cruise missiles, although earlier, when in opposition, Merz repeatedly called on Olaf Scholz's government to provide these missiles to Ukraine. Currently, sources consider the topic of Taurus to be virtually taboo. At the same time, Bild also reported that Germany might finance the development of Ukrainian cruise missiles with a range of up to 2,500 kilometers. And this, in fact, could become an alternative to the German Taurus missiles. According to Bild, the German government is considering allocating millions of euros to support Ukrainian defense projects, including the mass production of missiles with a range of up to 2,500 kilometers. Some of these are already being used to strike deep into Russian territory. In addition, Bild sources report that Germany is also discussing the possibility of providing Ukraine with additional air defense systems, including Iris-T, as well as additional multiple launch rocket systems, with a range of up to 85 kilometers. In 2022, Germany had already delivered 5 such systems. The new deliveries may also include missiles for them, which would partially fulfill the promise of providing longer-range weaponry. However, the use of the Mars 2 is limited. The M30 and M31 missiles are guided by GPS, but Russia effectively jams these signals. Moreover, most enemy bases are beyond the range of this system. In fact, I hope there will be more specifics and details on this issue after the meeting between Zelensky and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. So in the next episodes, we will definitely tell you all the details. Last night, Russia was massively attacked by drones. Russians are reporting that in Moscow and the Moscow region, a drone attacked facilities connected to the Russian military-industrial complex. Of course, it comes later. Oh, lie down. Fall, fall. Oh, gypsy. In particular, the Elma Technopark in Zelenograd was hit. It manufactures fiber optics and electrical devices. Let me remind you, it is precisely fiber optic drones that are currently causing a lot of problems for Ukraine's defenders. Meanwhile, the Russian Ministry of Defense stated that from 21 hours to midnight, they destroyed and intercepted 112 drones over the territory of 6 Russian regions. Ukrainian drones also attacked the Russian capital. The mayor of Moscow, Sergei Sobyanin, reported that 18 drones heading for the city were shot down. In fact, because of the drone attack, operations at Moscow airports literally came to a halt.
Man, there's a line at the airport entrance. And then the second tail went in that direction.
According to preliminary information, because of the drone attack, 52 flights were delayed and another 62 were cancelled altogether. Who else, like me, is rooting for a Ukrainian drone to one night fly right into Putin's bedroom? Give this video a like, and I know for sure that we already have drones capable of carrying out such a mission. For the first time, Ukraine has used an artificial intelligence-powered drone against Russia. Forbes reports that this is about the reusable carrier drone Hohol-M, which delivers 2 FPV drones to a target up to 300 kilometers away. After releasing the strike drones, the carrier returns while the FPV drones carry out attacks guided by artificial intelligence. By the way, I'd like to remind you that just recently, US President Donald Trump stated that the United States is already adopting the experience of drone use in Ukraine. Is your wife beating you? Then come to our self-defense courses. This is an example of situational marketing from a French gym, which cleverly took advantage of the incident where Macron was slapped by his wife Brigitte. Let me remind you, just recently Macron was slapped by his wife when their plane landed in Vietnam. Later, Macron tried to offer his hand to his wife to support her as she was coming down the stairs. However, Mrs. Brigitte refused his help. Later, Emmanuel Macron commented on this incident, explaining that he and his wife were just joking, while the media, according to Macron, blew the whole thing out of proportion. Please like this video to support what we do, and be sure to subscribe to our channel Ukraine Today so you don't miss our upcoming episodes.